So I saw this quote from Draymond Green. I tell you, I bumped into him at the fight when Tyson Fury fought Wilder. He liked me. I liked him. Anywho. So he says he's picking the Lakers to win the championship because of one guy. You know who the one guy is. Here's Draymond Green.
The Lakers got to be the favorite because, like, they got LeBron, and that he can kind of adjust to anything. And I think he's probably the most disciplined player we've ever seen in the NBA. And that's going to matter going into this bubble. And so I think, having LeBron on your team going into this bubble gives you a slight advantage.
LeBron's not going to win the championship. The only question for LeBron is when he doesn't win it, how much does he blow up this organization and get a real star player alongside he and Anthony Davis? Folks, we have a history with LeBron. He's 3-6 in the finals. When he has help, he gets the 3. When he doesn't have enough help, he gets the 6. They're not winning because they just lost Avery Bradley. And I know what you're saying. What's Avery Bradley? He's a piece. Nobody's winning it by themselves. If they did, LeBron would be 9-0 in the finals. The reason Michael Jordan, we just watched the documentary, went 6 for 6 in finals because he had Scottie Pippen in all of them. And then Dennis Rodman in some. And then Phil Jackson, the greatest coach in the modern era. Michael didn't do anything out of college into the NBA without Scottie Pippen, without Phil Jackson. Didn't do anything. Couldn't get past the Pistons. That's the best basketball player ever, and I think LeBron's first or second best basketball player ever. Magic doesn't win the titles if he doesn't inherit Kareem and he doesn't get Pat Riley, probably one of the smartest 2 or 3 people that's ever been in the NBA. LeBron's not winning the championship. It's not a knock on LeBron. He didn't have enough pieces. Is everybody forgetting that Avery Bradley is their 3rd best defensive player? That he would have been on the floor in the final few minutes of these playoff games. Like when they go to the bubble now, if there's 3.5 minutes left and they're tied with the Clippers, Avery Bradley would have been on the floor. He plays 24 to 25 minutes a night, gives you 8.5 points, 44% from the field, 36% on threes, and he is their 3rd best defender after Anthony Davis and LeBron, according to defensive win shares. He would have been on the floor, not Jared Cook or Jared Dudley or Quinn Cook. So now what it comes down to is more on LeBron's shoulders, and we've seen that happen 6 times in the NBA Finals, and he's lost each one. That's not in any way a shot at LeBron James. The only question for the Lakers is when they lose to the Clippers or Milwaukee or Boston. And I think Boston really has too many good players, and I think the Clippers have too many good players. Then what does LeBron do next? But right now, without Avery Bradley, who would be on the floor late in games, a two-way player, a defendable veteran, high IQ, this is LeBron's kind of guy. And that's why he's playing for the Lakers. It's LeBron's kind of guy. They had all the young guys. They move out. He gets Avery Bradley. It's not a coincidence. They started moving older veteran players in. Danny Green, LeBron wanted him. He was on the market. Avery Bradley, LeBron wanted him. He was on the market. Why? Veteran players, high IQ, get the game, play both ways. And Avery's gone. So now the rotation, the Lakers' playoff hopes are down to LeBron, AD, Danny Green, and cross your fingers. That's not a championship winning formula. Not when you have a stacked Clippers, a stacked Celtics, and a very good Milwaukee team. And by the way, don't count out Toronto. A lot of veterans. I just don't know if they have enough shot makers at the end of the clock. But the question's going to become, this is not about, anytime you say they'll win it because of LeBron, folks, you can't depend solely on LeBron. And nope, this is one of these stories in sports nobody's paying attention to. Avery Bradley's a real player. He is a real player on a championship team. 24 minutes, 9 points a game, 44% from the field, 3rd best defensive player. Now you got Kyle Kuzma's been a Laker for 3 years. We looked it up this morning. Does he have a game-winning shot with the Lakers? I'm not sure he does. I don't think he has a shot under 12 seconds in any Laker game for the win. He may. I looked it up this morning, couldn't find it. That's what the playoffs are. Close games, big shots late. I don't think Kuzma has one. By the way, Nick Wright and I talked about this last week, about the value of Avery Bradley. You just think he's just a guy, but Toronto last year won the championship with a bunch of people we thought outside of Kawhi were just guys. The playoffs is about veterans, two-way players, depth, situational excellence, 45% shooting, hit a 3, make a stop. That's what playoff basketball is about. Avery Bradley was good for that. Avery Bradley was a key component to this team. He's just a guy. Toronto was full of just a guys last year, and they won the championship. Here's Nick Wright talking about now that Avery's out, what do they do?
It does put the Lakers in a tougher spot. It does put more on LeBron. and they have one of three options, and two of them are fine here, Colin. They'll probably sign my buddy JR, which makes me happy, but he probably won't be a big part of the rotation. Option one is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope replaces Avery in the starting lineup. That's what they did when Avery missed games. Option two is Alex Caruso replace Avery in the starting lineup. That's the one I would go with. Option three is the only one where if they go this way, I'm going to be like, man, Colin and his damn beloved Clippers might have an edge finally. And that's if they end up starting Rondo. Rondo has been a negative player for this team. If he ends up getting the starting lineup spot, that's going to be really bad for the Lakers.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to get the starting spot, but, once you heap more on LeBron, we have a history, it doesn't work. The New York Knicks have a brand. I don't think it's nearly as good as people think, but this is one of these what could have been in sports. LeBron James, when he was in Cleveland, according to Bill Simmons, wanted to be a Knick. I mean, let's be honest. The late Kobe Bryant used to say there was nothing like playing in New York. Phil Jackson took a job in New York. LeBron talked about New York. New York is special. Michael Jordan loved playing in New York. There's something about it. The fans, whatever. But this is the classic what could have been in sports. LeBron goes Cleveland to Miami. He met with New York, and here's what apparently transpired.
From everyone I've talked to in the know since then, it's clear that the Knicks were the first choice. And I'm sorry, Knicks fans, earmuffs, but it was basically the Knicks to lose, and they just couldn't stay out of their own way. And the stories are legendary. Well, they had the legendary meeting, and Donnie Walsh was in the wheelchair, and Dolan was Dolan, and it was just they didn't have anything prepared, and it just couldn't have gone worse by all accounts. It was a disaster.
Which is frustrating for fans. Now, some historical context. Every big brand in American sports, every one has had droughts. Alabama football went 18 years of Dennis Franchione and Mike DeBose and Mike Shula. They were 0 titles in 18 years, and Alabama was a big nothing burger. Green Bay Packers won Super Bowl II and Super Bowl 31. In between, not much to talk about. They had some bad years when I was a kid for about 15 straight years. The Yankees went 12 years without even making the playoffs in the mid to late 80s and early 90s. The Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in 25 years. Everybody has a drought. The problem, those are solvable droughts, we mostly think. Alabama can hire the right football coach, right? Like, you can get the right coach or the right quarterback. People in LA complain about USC football, and I'm like, they won the Rose Bowl 4 years ago. They beat a college football power, Penn State. It's been 4 years. And even last year, they weren't unwatchable. They lose to Notre Dame now. They shouldn't lose to Notre Dame as often as they do, but it's, you can watch the games. They've got NFL-level players sometimes. But what's scary for the Knicks is that it's James Dolan, and he doesn't have any interest selling the team. So that becomes unsolvable. It's not the right GM, the right coach, the right star player. They've got the wrong owner. And from Donald Sterling to the Detroit Lions to the Cubs for years to an aged Al Davis, if the owner's bad, you're bad. And it's unsolvable. The second issue, do the Knicks really have a brand? Because think about this. They have the losingest playoff win percentage in the NBA this century. They've got 8 division titles in their history and 23 last place finishes. What is their brand? So the last time, Dolan bought them in 99. They've been irrelevant for 20 years. And since most of us don't start watching TV in sports till about we're 6 or 7, 8 years old, that means for anybody that's 28 and younger, they're irrelevant. Because they've been irrelevant for 20 years. So the question now, it's a bad draft, there's no free agents, and they've got a stink on the franchise that no free agents want to play there. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say they're going to be irrelevant for at least the next 4 years, maybe 5. So that would be 25 years of irrelevance. And if kids don't watch TV sports and really, start building their loyalty to about 7, 8 years old, 25 plus 7 or 8 is 32. Meaning nobody under 32 years old sees them as a brand. Translation, free agents. Kevin Durant talks about that. What is their brand?
I think a lot of fans look at the Knicks as a brand and expect these younger players who, in their lifetime, don't remember the Knicks being good. I didn't grow up with the Knicks. Well, I seen the Knicks in the finals, but kids coming up after me didn't see that. So
Right.
that whole brand of the Knicks to them is not as cool as, let's say, the Golden State Warriors or even the Lakers or the Nets now. You know what I'm saying? It's like the cool thing right now is not the Knicks.
My question is, if they're bad for 4 more years and they don't have a star player now, it's not a good free agent year or a draft year, and they've got a stink that's going to hurt them for at least the next 4 to 5 years, that makes 25 years of irrelevance. Kids don't really start getting into a brand or a team until they're 6, 7, or 8 years old. Nobody under 32 even sees them as a brand. I mean, that between Dolan and that, you've got yourself something that may not recover. I want to ask Doug Gottlieb. Doug was a great college basketball player, and he's still a good old basketball player via the Cowherd Global Satellite Network, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. It's one of those stories. I understand, Doug, the NBA is a star-driven league. It should be, blah, blah, blah. But I do look at Avery Bradley, and I think to myself, no, he would be on the floor with 3 minutes left in a game for the Lakers in the playoff spot. Like, he feels like he'd be a starter, right? Like, it's a loss, right?
No question. What's amazing about the Avery Bradley story is kind of twofold. One, the Lakers, and Colin, I think you'd agree with me, before COVID and the quarantine, the Lakers were the best, or trending to be the best team in the NBA, right?
Yeah,
They'd be the Clippers and the Bucks. That's fair. Okay. What coincided with that last month where they became the best team in the NBA? Avery Bradley was playing his best basketball, was finally making jump shots.
Yep.
So now you take Avery Bradley off that team, and that changes the dynamic of the Lakers dramatically. I like the J.R. Smith signing. He's a professional assassin, shot maker who can defend. But there's a reason he was out on the market. There's a reason he hasn't played a basketball game in the NBA in over 600 days. And while he's a nice addition, he's not Avery Bradley. So there's two different parts to it. One, changes the Lakers dramatically. And two, and for the worse, by the way. And two, the Lakers will never say it publicly, but if you're LeBron James, you got to be ticked. You got what? 1, 2, maybe 3 shots max of winning a championship. And Avery Bradley doesn't want to be a part of that team. Avery Bradley has a player option next year. It's his option. But I'm just going to tell you, LeBron never say it publicly. Other players never say it publicly. But I'm just educated guessing here that those guys are hot over Avery Bradley bailing on them when all they got to do is dedicate 3 months of their time. And I understand he has a son, 6 years old, has some health issues. A lot of these players are concerned about their kids just because when their families come down, the families have to be in quarantine for 4 days, right? Like, you got a little kid, you want them in one room, one condo essentially for 4 days. No, everyone's going to go. It's hard on every family, but you've been at home for 3 months and you got a chance to win an NBA championship. And Avery Bradley's out. That changes the Lakers for the worse. And I cannot think that most of those guys, not what they say on Twitter or on Instagram or in front of the cameras where they want to support their teammate. The truth is, they're ticked that Avery Bradley's not making the trip.
Yeah, a lot of people say stuff privately they won't talk about. I mean, nobody wants to admit that, but I do think there are Lakers that are not in a great mood this morning. Let me shift to this. So, we were talking about the Knicks brand, and I started watching sports around 7 years old. That's when I remember watching my first games, and that's when I became fans of certain teams. So the Knicks have been bad for 20 years. And that means if you were born 20 years ago, they haven't been relevant. And so 27 if you count the 20 years they've been bad and the 7 years until you started watching TV. Basically, anybody 26 and under, the Knicks have never been a brand, ever. Okay? If they're going to be irrelevant for another 4 to 5 years, that means nobody under 30, 32 years old. They're not a brand. I mean, you're old enough that you do remember they're probably a little bit of a brand to you. But when I read the Bill Simmons and hear his podcast, and he's like, no, LeBron wanted to go there. My question is LeBron the last superstar that wants to go to the Knicks?
Well, maybe. I don't know if Kevin Durant wanted to go there. Obviously, they apparently didn't have interest in Kevin Durant because he's coming off the Achilles tendon tear. Look, I would caution you, Colin, in that we've been friends long enough, and you quit when Saban went to Alabama. You're like, how many guys are going to? Dennis Franchione tried it, couldn't make it work. I mean, the fact is that one reason I know is not just because I'm old enough to remember when they were in the finals, but I'm the son of a New Yorker, a guy who grew up during kind of the time when it was the Mecca, and Red Holtzman led them to their last NBA championship. And I do believe that anyone who's been through New York understands that to the guy or group of guys that fix this thing, that win a championship, you have no idea the amount of fandom, God, deity-like status you will achieve. But it's harder to climb than Everest, right? I mean, think of the names they have brought in. Reputable people.
Yeah.
Larry Brown was there for less than a year. I've never thought much of Isaiah Thomas, but Isaiah Thomas is a legend in basketball. He couldn't fix it. Phil Jackson is a former Knick who has 11 NBA titles. Granted, none of them in leading a franchise, but that thing was a disaster. They brought in big name players, Penny Hardaway, Amari Stoudemire, like you go Chauncey Billups, and you go back through with Carmelo Anthony. They've tried everything. They've thrown the kitchen sink at it, and it hasn't worked. Now, the problem with New York is that Knicks fans, basketball fans, view it as a Broadway show. It might not be the best show, but it's the only show in town, and they'll go see it. The Knicks, while they may not be a brand to you or to some of the younger sports fans, NBA players who go through that building know there's something special about playing in the Garden, and it's always going to be a draw. Look, they tried changing up the front office, and it was well respected last time around, but they missed on Zion and couldn't even get interviews with the top free agents. Now they're going to try Leon Rose and Worldwide West. They're going to try everything. The fact is, though, that in New York City, it is still a brand. They're much more popular and much more watched, even if they're hated, than the Brooklyn Nets, who are a far better run franchise. And somebody is going to pick up that mantle and try and run with it. And somebody at some point in the next 50 years will achieve climbing that Mount Everest-like mountain. And to that person, they will be revered like Red Holtzman is even today.
So with Cam Newton, it's interesting. There's a big gap between the betting market. Basically, the betting market's like the Patriots are half a game better with Cam than Jarrett Stidham, and the media, which thinks it's a revolution. Randy Moss, it's going to be more fun. To that I say, in Foxborough, they like winning. Losing and being stylish is not fun. What's realistic with Cam? Because the betting market's telling me one thing, not that much production. And the fans and the media are telling me this is going to change the league. What is it?
Well, I mean, there's so much unknown here. Look, I've heard people, really, really smart people, say really, really silly stuff. Like, oh, well, Bill Belichick remembers in 2013 when Cam Newton was it's 2020. He's had 9 injuries since then, And, oh, yeah, by the way, it's not like they're injuries to parts of his body that he doesn't use. He had a foot problem. He's had 2 shoulder surgeries. Now, I don't know about you, Colin, but the 2 things that make Cam Newton one of the most dynamic athletes we've ever seen in football are his legs as an athlete and his shoulder as a thrower. And when both of those are called into question, there's a reason only one team offered him a contract, and it's at the NFL's veteran minimum level. No one knows if Cam Newton is healthy, can throw. This is a big thing. He had to change his throwing motion because of shoulder surgery. He's throwing gutter balls, and it didn't look good last year. And I talked to NFL teams who are like, look, forget about all the flamboyance and the scarves. Like, we don't actually care. Like, the big thing is, can he throw a football? And how does he fit with what they want to do? And how do they want to use him? There's so much unknown here. But here's the last thing. The free agent hit rate is about 33%. About 1/3 of free agents hit. Then when you consider how long he was on the market, the money, this is just Bill Belichick doing a dumpster dive and seeing if they can get something from a penny stock. Really, that's what it is. Can he get something out of a penny stock? If it hits, great for Belichick. He sits Stidham. If he doesn't, he's got Stidham, who's just going to operate the offense. What do I think it really does? I follow Vegas. They have a tendency to know a whole hell of a lot more. And to people that think that suddenly now they're the best team in the AFC East, like, I don't know, the Jets finished, 7-2 down the stretch once Sam Darnold was back. Buffalo is now a playoff team. I don't love Jared Allen, but I do love what Sean McDermott has done. And Miami has to be better. Do I think they could have a little bit more fun? Sure. But we're depending on Cam Newton, who had one great year in the NFL, supported by the best defense and an unbelievable running game. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they played the year he won the NFL's MVP, they played one team in the regular season with an above 500 record. That's it. Okay, they played a soft schedule. Now, he was great in the playoffs, and he was good in the playoffs. They went to a Super Bowl. He was bad in the Super Bowl. But that was 5 years ago, several surgeries ago. The answer is, I have no idea what Cam Newton has left in the tank. I have no idea how they would use him, and if he can stay healthy, if he can throw a football. And neither does anybody in Vegas. Forget what the media is talking about, because they're dealing with dated data. That dated data goes back 5 years.
Good stuff, Doug Gottlieb, the Duggar, Fox Sports Radio, right after our show. Good talking to you, buddy.